3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. RankNReview.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the 11st episode of Rank and Review. This week, regular guest Jason Dubray and your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons, that's me, are going to discuss 6 creature features. And it's an interesting bunch. There's a lot of romance, there's a lot of war, there's a lot of intrigue, a real mixed bag. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you go into it with the understanding, as with every episode, that there will be coarse language and there will be spoilers for the films discussed. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. Send your feedback to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's RankNReview. And please, tell a friend about the show. Now, off we go with episode 111. So, Jason Dubray is back on the podcast, and here we are to discuss creature features. This is Creature Features Volume 4, and I know I kind of bullied you into doing genre again.
No, I wanted this.
You wanted this? You felt this coming?
I wanted something that I hadn't done before. I think this is my fourth time.
Podcast?
Yeah.
And thank you for coming back. I find it an interesting list of monster movies. I mean, there's other layers to all of them, but you could call them monster movies for the most part. But interesting, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. I was thinking about this. I watched all 6 of them fairly close together, and I found them to be, as much as I enjoyed a lot of them, relatively scare-free.
Yeah, I wasn't scared by anything.
I wasn't going to lose sleep over these movies. I wasn't going to, that image is going to haunt me.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it is about, like, these monster movies, when you're inventing a creature, you're doing that, like, why movies like The Descent or Jaws are so rare is that I think it's a really hard thing to do well. I think people don't give enough credit to how making a really great creature feature is no easy feat. It's kind of a dismissed to the side genre in a lot of ways. And like I do with so many other horror genres in Rank and Review, I'm here to defend, okay? So I'm not going to say that all of these movies are amazing, but I'm going to come towards them as a fan approaching them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that I would approach a movie like, say, Munich with a bit of a more critical eye than I approach a movie like Tremors 5.
Yeah.
What is Munich trying to do? What is Tremors 5 trying to do? What's behind Munich? What's behind Tremors 5? So I think this is an episode for genre fans, but that's okay. That's my jam. You watched these 6 monster movies. Are we still friends?
Oh yes, yeah. It was nice in some ways. This is the only time I've done a podcast where I hadn't watched any one of the 6 movies beforehand. So it was a total kind of a fresh start. Versus the last time when it was 6 crime films that I am in love with each and every one of them.
Right.
Have watched many times, and yet there's that thing when in our discussion we rip some of those movies apart a lot more than we'll likely rip these movies apart.
Yes.
What was interesting to me is that throughout almost all of these films, even there's a moment in Monsters, Dark Continent, there's a bit of a romantic subplot. Yeah, and it's in one case of one of the movies, I think the romance is actually predominant, and so that was something that I found interesting and I kind of liked going through this too. What you're saying about the magic of Jaws,
right?
it's just if you can get to that, somehow get to people's like 3-year-old selves where they see something and it's just absolutely frightening, this creature, the creature in the closet type of thing, that's very rare. It's magic. What would be interesting, I don't recommend this from a psychological point of view, but if you showed some of these movies to a 3 or 4-year-old, would it scare the crap out of them?
Well, you'd be surprised the stuff that a 3 or 4-year-old can handle that a 5 or 6-year-old couldn't. Right? To them, it's like images in color. It's not really fully being processed, right?
Yeah.
I knew a little girl that would watch Aliens versus Predator with her daddy, and she was just little and bouncing on his knee. And then one day, the day came where that wasn't cool anymore, and they both recognized it, and that stopped happening. But kids can take. I think they're tougher than you realize. I was, of course, watching ridiculously hard movies when I was too young, and strangely, my kids are the opposite. I have to bully them into watching even light movies. My son's been getting into time travel, so I practically Clockwork Oranged him into watching Back to the Future. Yeah. And he watched it, and surprise, surprise, it's awesome, right?
Of course.
So, but he's not interested in the horror. When I was a kid, I was really, especially this type of movie, if there was a giant spider or a guy who can telekinetically communicate with rats, or he can just sign me up, right? It's interesting.
I sometimes think these things skip generations almost.
Maybe.
Yeah, it might be like when you're a grandfather or something. They'll be,
I keep waiting.
Let's watch The Shining, Grandpa.
I keep waiting. Owen's going into high school next year.
Oh wow!
And I keep waiting for the day where he will discover it. And then I'm I have this incredible closet cabinet just jammed with classic horror movies. So if that day comes, I totally have his back. But no, right now, Jurassic World is too scary for me.
I think that's going to change soon. Definitely in the next 2 years or so. I'm teaching lots of students, and it's like these sweet kids that they look like the kid next door or something like that, and come up to me and they just tell me how much they love horror movies, and it's it really goes against type. And
Dubray, have you seen Last House on the Left?
Yeah, exactly. Which I have, and that's memorable.
Yikes.
Yeah. I actually have that at home.
Strange coincidence.
Yeah.
So, I love me some monster movies. I don't know what more I want to say before we get into it. I guess I can list off the movies we're going to, but you said you hadn't seen any of the 6, but you're not mad at me. So,
no. I love watching movies. You could give me... We could have an Adam Sandler show. I would be happy just to be here talking. I'd complain about him. I wouldn't complain about you, no.
That's very sweet, Jason. Well, we'll see. I think perhaps with the notable exception of Tremors 5, these are fairly patient horror movies, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes.
A lot of people, because there are those grindhouse movies, it's just sort of wall-to-wall hamburgers, right? That people will rent these movies saying, this can be a vicious monster movie, and might be defeated by it. If there was a subheading to this episode, I don't think there will be. I think it's just Creature Features 4, but it would almost be patient horror, because these movies really care about character and wanting you to feel the jeopardy. So when the monster does finally show up, we care. We care. That's the difference.
In some of them, yeah.
In some of them. We'll get there. The 6 monster movies that we're going to discuss. We have the remake of Willard, starring Crispin Glover, from Glenn Morgan. He did the first and third Final Destination movies, and has largely been working in television otherwise. Interesting. We're going to look at the sequel to sort of cult hit Monsters. This one's called Monsters Dark Continent. Came and went with very little fanfare. There's a lot of people who probably did they make a sequel to Monsters? I didn't even know that, but yes, they did, and we're going to talk about it. We have a romantic monster movie called Spring. We have Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. This is from Glass Eye Pix and Larry Fessenden, who I'm a big cheerleader for. Just like that dude. He supports low-budget horror, and he makes really good low-budget horror.
Yeah.
As we mentioned several times already, Tremors 5,
Tremors
Bloodlines. And we'll wrap it up with a really strange and interesting number called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Let's do it.
was right.
Willard,
Night, Mom.
come in here.
Willard, what an awful name. If you had a stronger name, that Frank Martin wouldn't push you around.
What part of you're fired don't you understand?
Willard, let's go drink. I'm not hitting on you, Willard.
Willard's styles didn't quite fit in.
It's been a bad day. Look, everybody, food.
But he's suddenly become very popular.
You're the best friends that I ever had.
Now,
Turd up.
a guy who could never get a break
Yeah.
is about to get even.
Out. We've come to see you. They'll do anything I tell them. Turn up.
So I don't have a great relationship with the original Willard and its sequel Ben from the 70s. I know the Michael Jackson song. I think everybody knows the song. I have a memory that I saw them when I was a kid, but they don't loom large in any way. It's not an important work for me as far as I'm concerned. It existed, I saw it, I forgot it. But this is in the age of every halfway popular horror movie being remade.
Oh, yeah.
And there's still a lot of stink in the early aughts when this Willard movie came out on remakes. I was guilty of this too. I was like, must they remake everything? I was just sort of default shields up to remakes. I was just disappointed so many times, just like, come up with a new idea or remake a bad movie. Stop stepping on shit that I like. So I didn't rush to Willard, but I found my way to it. And I don't know, I'm confused about my emotions about the movie. There's stuff in it that I do really like. I think that if you're going to have an over-the-top villain, you can do yourself a great favor by hiring Arlie Ermey, right? If you want someone to play bad with great enthusiasm, he's going to be there for you. And as we were talking about, Laura Haring?
Yeah, Herring or Haring, yeah.
Unfortunately, as I always thought of the chick from Mulholland Drive, she's pretty in the movie, and I guess she's in the movie, but when all is said and done, I'm wondering what she contributed to the movie, right?
It's...
So, and the biggest question mark, and I will hand this over to you, sorry,
yes,
is Crispin Glover. An interesting figure, right?
Yeah.
Is Crispin Glover, in playing our main character Willard, a man who manages to psychic connection with rats and uses this connection to exact some revenge, is he giving us a layered performance of somebody's psychological deterioration, or is he just Crispin Glover? That's, I guess, where I would start with.
I like all those questions a lot. Laura Herring, we'll start with her. I was so happy to see her in this movie, and obviously I didn't rush to this film too because it's 13 years old, and I've just watched it.
You just watched it last week.
Yeah, and I remember I don't think I knew about the original, but I remember when it came out in theaters, and I had no interest in seeing it at that time. But then I heard that it was actually good. It didn't get the worst reviews ever, but it sort of stayed around. It was so funny because I tried to find these movies on my own through various ways, and to me this was the most identifiable movie that we're talking about today, and it was the hardest to find.
Weird.
I had to borrow your copy, which I haven't had to do before. So, and I just don't know why it is that movies like this that they're from the 21st century. Why can't you get them even at high tech game traders or places like that? Yeah. And interestingly enough, I could get the original more easily than I can get this one. So anyway, with her performance, I think it's another one of those things where I'm so happy to see her in something else. I think of her as the other star of Mulholland Drive, and she has a real presence on screen. It's a very, very unique presence. She's not flashy in what she does. I think she was the victim of writing in this case. That it's a male writer that had had like this is the only human being who cares and is decent towards Willard, and
she has empathy for him, and it
she
actually
does.
grows to a genuine warmth.
Yeah, and I don't completely know why that is, and she's just one of these people who, you know, likes the underdog, or you know, there is a bit of a suggestion that she may have a crush on Willard. That might be just my take on it.
It's
and
sort of that mother figure. She wants to like comfort him and make him feel better, and she pities him, and somehow that can get distorted into something else.
Yeah.
But I found myself debating the same way I was debating with Crispin Glover. Like, is it a weak script for her? Is it that she doesn't have anything to do, or is it like she's very beautiful and in a strange way very cinematically beautiful? Like she seems to belong on screen. But I was like, is her performance flat, or is her character just not that interesting? And I was actually kind of having that debate.
I thought there'd be a payoff with her character, a lot more than there was.
Kind of
her best scene, as far as anything that she gets to do, is when she tells off. It's not telling off the boss, but the boss's secretary.
Yeah.
And she quits.
Yeah.
Just out of protest
because they were firing Willard, and they were so cruel to him.
Yeah.
She just couldn't stand to work there anymore.
Yeah. And she'd had enough. The rest of the time, she's just kind of there, and I'm not sure that I completely blame her. She does do better, I think, if she's working with somebody like David Lynch, who can...
But again, she had a weirdly otherworldly quality in that movie.
Yeah.
It was like she fit into Lynch world. Just like I don't know if it's her script. Again, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you.
Well, and I mean, I haven't seen a ton of movies that... basically, these two are the main ones, and... it could be that, and it's a little bit of my criticism of Willard. I'm not going to be too critical of it, but great cast.
Yeah.
But were any of these roles a stretch for any of these people? Arlie Ermey has been better at this type of thing in other films, but exactly, you know, I would cast him in this role every time. Crispin Glover, as you said, he's very interesting. He walked away from one of the most successful
trilogies in history.
Yeah, and I was too young to understand that he'd left after the first film.
Yeah.
And then the movies he's done, like he's been in some Lynch films too, I think, and a few
make
other things.
cameos.
But he's not a regular presence in a lot of films.
You certainly don't see him anchoring a movie very often.
No,
right?
he's
usually the quirky villain or the quirky friend, right? I just talked about him in What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the mortician with a really weird sense of humor, and there's something a little off about him. And that's, if you want to have a character where there's something a little off about him, I can see you considering Crispin Glover, because he's an odd duck, and he seems to. His focus in his career seems to be more about being an odd duck than about you know, anything else. In a lot of ways, he's true to himself, and like I remember talking about him in a Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. He does this absolutely ridiculous dance in it, and I remember thinking, oh, that's got to be the most cringy 80 thing. Like, he's got to hate himself for that. No, that was all Crispin. That was all
he came up with that. Yeah.
He chose that move. That was this is how, if he was in a club, that's how Crispin was going to do his jam. But it's interesting, if you know a little bit behind the scenes, Crispin Glover wasn't their first choice by actually a significant degree.
Oh, really?
Doug Hutchinson.
Oh, yes.
From The Green Mile and other things, was originally going to be their Willard, but there was...
I could see that.
He'd worked with him because then Morgan worked on the X-Files, and he'd done an episode of the X-Files.
Yes, that was a good episode.
And so he just liked the guy's look, thought he could really do this. Doug Hutchinson's career went up. He had other things he was doing, and they kept on having to push back the schedule because they couldn't find their Willard. They went to Mark Ruffalo. They went to all sorts of different people, and finally they came to Crispin Glover. And they even had to wait the shoot for several months for Crispin Glover to finish another thing. Like, it really messed with their production. So I don't think Glenn Morgan was like, yeah, Crispin Glover as Willard, this is my movie, right? He kind of got there. And that's where I was sort of wondering, like, is this just Crispin Glover being weirdo, or is he making choices for Willard, or is he making choices for Crispin? Unfortunately, this was a huge bomb, this movie. And it was the first of 2 remakes that Glenn Morgan made, and the first of 2 bombs that he made. And he's sort of crawled back to television and never come back, right? I think that Black Christmas deserved to bomb because it just didn't do justice to the original, and it's kind of a sloppy slasher movie. I think Willard kind of gets a bad rap. I don't want to get feverishly excited about it, but it's underrated.
Yeah, I agree. I was entertained from the beginning to the end. I kind of thought, in a way, it was stylistically, it was a marriage of Hitchcock and Tim Burton.
Right. Okay.
Neither of them would have necessarily completely touched this material. I could see Burton getting into something with rats, but not quite to this level. So I thought the style worked really well. I thought Crispin Glover was right for this role.
He makes sense.
It makes sense. I didn't see a huge problem. He gives the best performance in the film, I think. There were just a couple moments where, and this is where I think I saw him a little bit more. I think he can sometimes operate way up here with his acting style. So he would have these giant moments that didn't seem psychologically motivated. They weren't built up. So he would start screaming about something and he's shaking, and then and maybe that's where he's comfortable.
Yeah.
But again, from the passive aggressive Willard, who you'd see his eyes moving and he's holding back all of his feelings, to these explosions, I didn't see the in-between
transition.
There. Yeah.
I think he's better at playing the roiling, like when he's being humiliated at work and he's just sitting there taking it.
Yeah.
And when he's sitting in the basement, when he first starts to figure out his powers with the rats and he's getting them to tear up the newspaper, and at first it's amusing him, and then he realizes, like, it dawns on his face. I think that Boyle works. But
that's great.
That's good.
That stuff is probably the best stuff. And
when he goes big, it's one of the climactic moments in the movie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
His best friend rat, Socrates, unfortunately, is crushed and squished at work.
And he can't do it. He's there. He can't do anything about it.
Can't do anything about it, and it's devastating to him. He loses his mom, and who wasn't very nice to him, but was still his mom, and Socrates, which really was his best friend.
And his father,
and
too.
His job, which is basically his last connection to his father. Right?
Yeah.
So everything is being chipped away, and that stuff works fine. But when he finally has this confrontation with Ben, after Socrates is gone, and he uses Ben to get the troops together and take the revenge.
We should mention that Ben is
the big rat.
Is the
villain.
Rat. There's a good and a bad, and Socrates is the good.
And Ben is the wild child.
Ben is pure evil.
And he's also twice the size of all the other rats. He's a different kind of rat. It's like some African rat that they brought in. But there's a scene where he's trying to make up with Ben. They've had a little difference of opinion, and he brings this grocery bag full of food, and he says, "It's all for you, Ben." And then he dumps the bag on top of the rat, and gets snapped in a trap and wounded. And Crispin Glover just goes off the charts. I hate you, Ben. I loved Socrates, but I hate you.
Yes.
And it's so big that I laugh.
It is.
I don't think that moment was supposed to be a laugh moment. But at the same time, I didn't hate it, because it was a little bit bonkers. But, I don't think that when Glenn Morgan wrote the script, that was a laugh line. Do you know what I mean?
You never know with these things. I mean, he was maybe trying to create a genuine horror movie, and just as things work themselves out with the cast, then there are points where we're being kind of ironic with this, and
they have some fun with it.
They have throughout, the cat business.
Mm-hmm.
This sequence is so. This is so this woman brings to make Willard feel better after his mother has died this cat, and he just doesn't want her in the house because she'll discover all of the
colony of rats.
Yes,
hundreds of rats.
So slips this cat in, and the TV accidentally goes on to what was it, Easy Listening Station, and it happens to be a version of Ben Plays, and it's beautifully filmed as this cat tries to escape all of these rats that that want to eat it. Well, Ben watches, manipulates things so the cat gets devoured. And we never hear about the cat ever again. And,
no, the cat's not living through that.
No.
And they
are still cheering for the cat. I have no idea why.
There's some nasty business where, the woman goes to use the bathroom and we know that the rats have been coming out through the toilet.
Yeah,
so there's some primal
thought there was going to be something.
Vulnerability there. So they do. It's not that they don't have a sense of humor, but I think that the tone of the film was probably a lot gloomier before Crispin Glover arrived. As to whether that hurt or helped the movie, I'm not 100%. Like I'm saying, it's like maybe a B- type of movie. I'm not like, it's not over the moon for it. It's worth a look, but it certainly didn't deserve the shunning that it seemed to receive. I get that Arlie Ermey's a bit of a cartoon, and I get that Crispin Glover's a little bit over the top, but this is a movie about a dude who psychically controls rats. And that stuff bothers me way less than the fact that a lot of those rats look too shiny and clean. Particularly Ben. Like, I get Socrates, because he's sort of the loved, precious rat, looking kind of cute and spotless. But Ben looked like he could have been sold at a pet shop, and he was supposed to be, this big.
Could have looked... Yeah, I suppose it could have looked more
fierce. Put some oil, grease him up, make him look dirty. You know what I mean? This
film, one thing I guess, and this is interesting that because I said I wasn't going to be as critical as I am, and this is actually one of the ones this list that I really liked. So I want to make that clear. But this is another movie that suffered. I saw a movie last night, much better than any of the ones we're talking about. The Spielberg film, The Post,
right? And
it really sticks to. We need the PG-13 rating, as did Willard.
Right.
And sometimes I feel that aspects of films compromise to try to avoid going... R used to be fine in 70s, 80s, and 90s, but now we can't have an R-rated movie because we're cutting off
too much
the 12-year-olds or whatever. And so I think a lot of the touches that we're talking about they really held back on some things so that Willard wouldn't have an R rating.
Yeah.
But it should be an R-rated movie. I mean, what's the point in having to be PG-13?
Well,
do
kids want to see that movie? I guess would be the question. My kids don't, but
again, I think
they don't want to chip away the date audience, right? And it's also that age group, the 18 to 25ers, that will see a movie like 5 or 6 times in the theater if they like it, right? Most of us old folks will see it maybe once, right?
Yeah.
So it's a fiscal decision, and if that's not made for art,
and this was the studio. I think, is this the only studio? No, that's not completely true. Like, other studios are kind of connected, but this is the most Hollywood film of the 6 we're looking at.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there were all kinds, even this constant recasting and trying to find their lead. That feels like their studio had their hand in this film.
But
in places,
I don't know. I've sort of got a soft spot for Glenn Morgan. I thought that he and his partner had to take over Millennium, the second season of Millennium, which I think is a probably better standalone season than anything the X-Files came out with. I think that there was really good stuff. They've been doing interesting things in television. Yeah. But he just seems to go from failed TV show to failed TV show until they revitalized the X-Files. It's been kind of dark days.
It's been tough for him, yeah.
I feel. So I'm always on his side.
And he's a talented filmmaker.
He doesn't suck. He doesn't suck.
No, I would tell if you are interested in a genre movie like this, I think people should see it.
Yeah.
I think more people should see it if you can find it.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I hope they find a way to make some of these movies a lot more accessible, because that's the other problem, is that they throw them away and then we can't.
They're lost.
We can't find them, and they are kind of lost. And I think people will be entertained. Probably the star of the film is the filmmaker.
Yeah.
As a director, I think. Perhaps maybe a little bit more than as a writer, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid film. Most of my criticisms are pretty picky. I mean, to criticize a movie because they have character actors as kind of the 3 leads, that's who cares? I mean, they're very good at the types of roles that they play, and I liked all three. Maybe this is not R. Lee Ermey's best, but that's another example where the R-rated R. Lee Ermey was needed in this film a little bit more. Like he's kind of berates in safe.
It's not Sergeant Hartman from Full Metal Jacket, but it's recognizable, right?
Yeah.
Seek it out.
Monsters surround, but they ain't scaring me. In the land of sand where they only speak Arabic. Far from home, I know they be missing me. My girl on the phone, dreaming of kissing me. Out here with Sergeant Forrest, but he ain't no gun. Got the rifle in the hand, making all your mamas jump. I'm from the D, man, you know, hoes and thugs. Lay it down like a king, catching giant sandbugs.
Monsters Dark Continent, co-written and directed by a British fellow named Tom Green. Not a Canadian weirdo named Tom Green. Different Tom Green. I have a good relationship with the first Monsters movie in that it had a nice reputation. I got my hands on the DVD, I watched it, and I remember really liking it and thinking, I guess my biggest beef with it is that for a movie called Monsters, there's not a lot of monsters in it.
It's an odd,
It's more of like this journey movie of the relationship between these two characters. So when I watched the original Monsters for the second time, I ended up actually liking it a lot more because I was prepared for instead of expecting a jump around every corner, I knew what it was. So I kind of felt like I was well calibrated going into Dark Continent. The original director, whose name is escaping me, went on to direct the Godzilla movie and the Rogue One, the Star Wars movie. Monsters was really a good sort of platform for him, and it was enough of a cult hit that here comes this sequel. So I guess I'm surprised and happy to say that I think that Dark Continent is actually twice the movie that Monsters is. And I'm really surprised to say that. I like Monsters, it's a good movie, but it's a rare thing when you have a sequel completely, where the reins of the creative reins are completely handed over to a completely new group of people, completely adjacent to the original, that they come up with something that, in my opinion, is actually an improvement. Shocking. But is it just because it sideswiped me that I feel this way? Or is it, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying, do you feel like they've upped their game here?
I feel like our lists aren't going to match this time.
No,
based on that, based on your introduction. So I just looked it up here. Monsters, the original one was Gareth Edwards is the name. Yeah. Okay, back to. I really liked Monsters.
Right.
Again, I watched it in preparation for this.
And you hadn't seen it before?
I hadn't seen it before,
right.
And part of me really enjoyed the fact that the monsters happened to be kind of the side, and it was just a really interesting story in Mexico of these two characters and this
through a forbidden zone, and the romance that develops. I thought it wasn't cliche-ish in any way, and all the obstacles they encounter along the way, and I thought the ending of that was about perfect. Right.
And you did have like the special effects payoff at the climax of the gas station in that movie.
Yeah.
Monsters Dark Continent, I hated.
You hated it?
I hated it. I really was. I was excited because I liked the first one so much. This one was. It felt like it was a movie done in the style of kind of a Hurt Locker type of business. It's these Detroit guys sign up for the military, and it's their last day, and they're partying up with drugs and booze and sex and women and all this stuff. In the meantime, one of them's had a child, and the wife is saying, "Oh, please protect him when you're over there." Yeah, but I'm not sure if he was the first one killed or whatever. And it was like, okay, I predicted that 5 minutes into the film. But then I was willing to go along with it. I was okay. This is a different story, a different take on things, and the last one was about Mexico, and this one is, I don't know if it's supposed to be Iraq or
they've relocated the catastrophic, whatever it is, the alien landing. In the original film, it's in the Southern Americas, and in this film, either there's another one or somehow it's moved to Middle East, right?
I feel like it's spread.
No. But I don't know how it crosses the ocean. It's not clear. But we've relocated. We're in a different part of the world. This is they're dealing with insurgents as well with monsters, right? Well, I guess there are things in it that are sort of familiar if you watch military genre movies, right? The dude who just had a baby, the hot-headed guys who are all gung-ho but aren't really genuinely prepared for what they're about to face. No. We've seen this dynamic before. And yes, the movie is in that sort of headset of the Hurt Locker, or probably more closely related to a Battle Los Angeles, or that District 9, that South African one. I think that's more the vibe that they're going for. I think what happens is they spend a good 40 minutes in Detroit with these guys, getting them here, getting them oriented. And that's what I think most people said, because this movie was largely dismissed. But again, I go back to what I said, especially in these military guys, when they're all wearing the fatigues and they're all screaming and you got the shaky camera, it's hard to even differentiate who's doing what in some action sequence in these types of movies. And what I think this movie did with that 40 minutes, and they spent 40 minutes doing it, is I knew all of those characters before they started to get picked off.
You did?
I did.
Wow,
so
I didn't.
Shit about them.
I didn't. No, I was so annoyed by them. I didn't like them. I thought, okay, when they get over there, there's gonna be something in here where I'm gonna care about these characters. Right. I didn't start to care about anybody until they were all dead except for two.
Right.
And then we have the two main actors. This grizzled commander or whatever who's done 17 tours, as a, there's all this stuff about this family, and he can't relate at home, which I've seen. Again, I thought they borrowed quite heavily from American Sniper with that character, and they even have him looking like Bradley Cooper with the facial hair and everything. One of the big problems I have with the movie, though, is we're down to the two characters, and to me the film started to settle down a little bit somewhere late in the second act, and I thought, okay, now I'm going to start to come around to liking this film. But, and let me get the gentleman's name here. Johnny Harris, who plays that character. He's such a bad actor. The only time he's comfortable is when he's screaming and yelling and emoting, and very rarely is it psychologically motivated. He was annoying. And I thought, well, finally I'm going to care about two characters, and I was starting to like that relationship, and then he goes off the charts again. And so I actually would have been happiest in this movie if, again, the monsters play almost no role in this. I wanted the monsters to come in and kill all of the human characters. I don't know what they could do after that, but I
don't know. I guess
I thought it was kind of a ripoff of a Hollywood war genre. It was a little bit racist in places, I might argue.
I can't sugarcoat it. I just completely disagree.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. It's fine. I'm glad you liked it more. I just...
Here's the thing, my problem with Battle Los Angeles, and this is a movie that I liked, was it was this raw, gung-ho, practically recruitment video for the military. And that's the price you pay for having military cooperation in your film. Yeah. If you want to actually have military guys do your shit, then you can't even have even the slightest flaw in any one of those characters, right? All of these characters, without exception, are deeply flawed. Now, maybe that's the other end of the spectrum. Maybe it's unfair to say that they're all rah, America perfect. And it's unfair to say that they're all somehow naive or damaged. Maybe the truth lives somewhere in between. But I always see the noble, brave, altruistic soldier. And I almost never see the naive, it's going to be awesome to go blow up some monsters. Yeah, these guys are idiots. And like the way they're portrayed at the beginning of their last night, the guy's wife just gave birth. And he ditches her to go, snort coke off of a hooker with a bunch of
That's
his
why
buddies, right?
That's why I couldn't like these characters from the beginning. I'm just... And I get...
Where is it set? You said it before.
Detroit.
Where do the military tend to recruit?
Detroit.
The poorest possible cities.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're looking for these guys to exploit, to throw into a meat grinder that they do not understand. It's true. Like, I saw truth in that. I also like the way, like, the first movie I was sort of sideswiped by how in the background the monsters are. In this movie, like, again, it's like I got half an hour into the movie, and the guys are in this warehouse, and you see what you think is a dog fight. But it's a fight between a dog and this weird alien creature. And that's the first glimpse all of a sudden. We're like, oh, right, there's fucking monsters in this movie. Which told me that I was getting caught up in the story. Like, oh, right, there's a monster here. They stayed true to the vibe of the original monsters, in that the monsters are the problem that they're there to deal with. But that's not what the movie's about.
I didn't feel that. I felt like it was a little bit more of an American, people from the Middle East are the villain here. Did we really have a three-dimensional character? We have that one woman that the soldier, kind of the central character, and I think he was good. He was the guy who had no family, and he just had his friends. Of course, they all get massacred. Yeah, I liked him. I believed him. But there's much criticism, and I'm not going to really defend American Sniper here, about how anybody who wasn't Caucasian and American was two-dimensional.
Right.
I felt that same thing here. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have the same expectations for...
I didn't think the movie was about them. In a lot of it was about those military guys. We stayed with them until there was basically none of them left, right? We were stuck in their perspective. And their perspective is that those people don't really have an identity. I'm not defending that perspective. I'm saying it's fucking accurate, right?
Yeah, it could be perspectives, but...
And
I think there were opportunities in there to...
Just how they incorporate the creatures, like those galloping horse-like creatures that came along the procession of vehicles. When you first saw them, like, they blended into the environment so completely that I wasn't even sure if they were a creature, if it was like a horse that had some shit draped over the back of it. But
I could tell they were special effects the whole time. I
hadn't seen those creatures before, right?
Well, that was the upgrade or whatever, because we didn't see them before.
Those big sort of Cthulhu monsters, I've seen versions of those before, but again, they're like these massive mountain-sized things lumbering around in the background, and they'll call in these bomb drops and blow them up, and whatever civilians happen to go in the wayside. Now, the character that I think you're underselling, the guy who ends up going crazy, he starts trying to keep the group together, trying to keep these naive idiots from Detroit who are here to get honor and glory, who have no fucking idea what they just volunteered for. He's trying in vain to keep them alive and failing miserably. And despite all of that, he's keeping his shit together. What's the thing that breaks him, Jason? It's finding a busload of dead children that he's probably responsible for. And at first he just goes to the bus looking for provisions. He's like tossing the corpses around trying to find water to drink. And they find one kid that's still alive, and he thinks that the merciful thing to do would be to just put him out of his misery. And the kid fights him off, and then he does get rescued. People show up just in time to take him back. He ends up dying eventually anyway, but I think in his head, the fact that he was about to kill this little kid just before rescue arrived, the fact that he just sorted through that bus of dead bodies, and the fact that he'd failed so completely to keep these kids alive, which was his main job, other than the mission, He didn't even get to succeed the people he was going to rescue. They were all corpses long before they got there. He failed as utterly as he could, and it destroyed him. And I felt for him.
See, okay, so going back to the training session or whatever, when they all... I didn't see that actor as being particularly comfortable with the softer moments, when he's screaming and yelling at them and calling names, which we mentioned Arlie Ermy in Full Metal Jacket in the previous review. It's not in that league at all, and I've seen that type of character in a million military films. And then later on, I had a different take on his motivation there. I thought he was upset that he couldn't put the kid out of his misery, and he took it out. Like I didn't get that. I wasn't getting the idea that he felt he had failed, and that's where all of that, the theatrics in the third act came from. There's some beautiful images in there, that sequence with all of the monsters. I'm not sure it's meant to be beautiful, but the lighting of it,
the spores or whatever.
Yeah, I liked the look of that. I mean, it's, but I have trouble getting behind a movie where I don't care about anybody, and I simply didn't care about anybody in this. And
ambitious horror movies just are such a rare thing, and there was 2 of them last year, A Cure for Wellness and this one, that were super ambitious, and I think really tried something, and they both ate dirt. Nobody gave a shit, and it breaks my heart. I'm glad that things like It were popular. That's good for horror, but I miss a good ambitious horror movie, and because this movie ate shit, and because Cure for Wellness ate shit, I guess the good news for you is we're going to see a lot less movies like these. But I think it was a complex monster movie, and that's rare.
The other thing is kind of, and maybe it's me projecting my expectations on this movie, I wanted to find out what happened to the human characters from the original. I was really interested in, I was totally invested in those characters, and so I thought, okay, this is a horror genre or horror
sci-fi
thing, perhaps a franchise, because I wouldn't write off another film just because this one didn't do all that well. As we talk about Tremors later on,
yes.
And I thought this is about the humans, and you mentioned kind of District 9 and some other movies like that. This is about the humans, and then the monster things in the background. And so I'm looking forward to, okay, it's not the same story. We've got Detroit, we've got the Middle East, but I will be invested in the human characters, and I'll want to go on this journey with them. And I didn't. I just did not like these guys. I couldn't get behind them. And
to go with the least subtle approach ever, I would say that the title Monsters refers to everyone and everything in the movie.
He's a monster, yeah. Do you have a problem with this dark continent? They're calling it Dark Continent. Middle East is the Dark Continent.
Well, again, I guess it's what you want to take about it. If you want to be offended by that, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if we need to be offended by everything, but
I know. But if you want to be offended by it, you could. I think they're trying to make a sinister title for a horror movie, and they probably weren't thinking too deeply about it. Okay. I don't think they're consciously trying to offend anyone. In fact, I would argue the opposite. I know you feel differently. When that main character goes crazy and starts pulling the trigger on these civilians, he feels they're responsible. Either they killed the military kids that he was there to rescue, or they know who did. Either way, in his mind, they're fucking guilty. And for me, it wasn't, why did you shoot that guy? It was, why did it take you so long to shoot that guy? Where was this going? He was going to murder that dude, and he fucking did, right? But it was complex. The drama worked for me. I mean, I know it didn't for you, but I will defend this movie, and I frankly wish there were more like it.
Okay.
Look, man, you need to change up your environment.
You're the most attractive person I've ever seen. Go out with me tomorrow night.
No.
Buongiorno.
Do you remember my name?
You never told me. Scusa.
You're learning.
Le donne sono del gelo del mondo.
And you're not afraid to embarrass yourself. That's good.
I'm Evan.
Louise.
I've been seeing this Italian girl. She's really pretty.
So, I only get to see you at night.
Our nights together must remain a secret.
She acts kind of weird sometimes, and I found something that gives me some doubts. Are you really from around here?
I'm half undiscovered science, bunch of confusing biochemistry, and some crazy hormones.
You probably lie a lot.
I've actually never lied to you. Even I'm a mystery to myself. I have a medical condition that comes and goes, and it's a very long story.
I gotta make sure you're the kind of crazy I can deal with.
Italian women. The best.
I think you could be the love of my life.
I don't think you're ready for where this is going.
I think a lot of people dream of spending a summer in Italy and maybe having a romance with a beautiful woman. And the main character, Evan, in Spring, is doing that, also sort of bouncing off of the tragic, miserable death of his mother and him being in a depressed place. He's doing exactly that. He's just trying to shake out the cobwebs, deal with his grief, and soak in some sun and soak in some culture. And he meets an interesting woman named Louise, who is absolutely gorgeous and who they vibe together really, really well. But
she approaches him.
Yeah. He suspects, though, there's something weird about it. There's something off about it. He thinks that maybe she's the drug addict, or there's another boy in the background. There's another shoe that's about to drop. But is it because, he's this damaged place, or is it because perhaps she's actually a creature that needs to feed on people to stay alive? Despite that, I think that the romance is very genuine. In fact, I would probably argue that the romantic element of this movie is what works the best about it. I mean, people may not think it would be doing it a disservice to say that it's a much more successful romance than a horror movie, but I think that can be true and that I can still recommend the movie, right? It's a different horror movie, like so many of the ones in the list that we're talking about. I haven't seen a movie like this before. It's obviously very low budget. It's an independent production, but it's got a lot of heart, and it's hard to dislike for that. I don't think it's for everyone, but for this guy sitting right here, I'm a fan of Spring. Not foaming at the mouth, but definitely confident thumbs up.
Yeah, this was the great surprise to me of the list. Because I didn't know a whole lot about it. And I want to go in with a fresh mindset, so I just watch the movie. I don't look up anything ahead of time. And so it starts off, it's interesting. Again, that's another kind of sub-theme throughout, is this mother business. He's a dying mother and how that impacts the male protagonist.
Right.
So it starts off with quite a sad scene, and then there's a few scenes where I thought, okay, this movie is probably going to annoy me. It's all the stuff back home. This is I think it was the night of the funeral, and he's in this bar with his friend, and then he hits on this girl, and then the girl's boyfriend shows up, and then gets into this fight, and I think he worked at the bar or something like that, so he loses his job because he beats up this guy who deserves being beat up, and then there's all this kind of low rent Kevin Smith dialogue. 1990s dialogue that happens, and I think they're trying really hard to make kind of this New Jersey indie neighborhood guy film. Then he decides to go to Italy, and to me that's where the movie started. And it is a low budget independent film, yet with that are some of the most beautiful shots. The cinematography in this film is gorgeous, and it was not what I was expecting, especially the first 20 minutes or so. But this magnificent score that goes along with it too. So they made the most of what they had. And then he meets the woman. It's always suspicious when this dream girl comes out and falls for this guy, and there's a few warnings. He ends up traveling around with I think they're British, right? A couple of British guys who are busting his balls a lot. Again, they were kind of another offshoot of a Kevin Smith type of character, and Kevin Smith of the 1990s, I guess, a little bit more. And again, I wasn't sure I liked them either, but then we got into this really interesting relationship, and that's when the two performances were marvelous. And as I've stated with the other reviews, I guess acting is really important to me in this. None of these screenplays are going to be winning awards. So then it's kind of up to how good is the director and how good is the cast. and they were awesome.
Yeah.
And I didn't completely know where this thing was going. This kind of creature that's a very unique creation. I mean, other things we're talking about vampires, we're talking about werewolves, we're talking about rats, and this was so unique and such a well thought out idea, and it's beautiful. And I was amazed at any one of these movies that I was kind of touched at the end of it, and about a perfect ending.
Well,
did you like the ending?
Well, I want to talk about the ending, but I want to get there.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, he's really suspicious of this girl, and he's not sure, like, he likes her, because it would be impossible not to be, like, attracted to that.
Plus, she's not just, she's just not standing there and looking pretty. I mean, she has a personality. She'll bust his chops as much as anybody else. I mean, there's...
I think the moment I knew the movie had me. Well, first of all, let me just defend a little bit the beginning of the movie.
Okay, sure.
I think there's something conscious happening there. That blow up at the restaurant or at the bar and the fight, that was all bubbling over from the death of his mother.
The grief.
That was not him being an asshole necessarily.
I didn't think he was, no.
I think that what they were trying to do by making it that arch was make the world of Italy such a different and better place than the world he came from. The sunshine, the warmth, that old farming guy that I really love.
Oh, that was such a great character.
Yes, a really warm relationship between those two. And but I think that's why it was that way, is what I'm saying. Just to make Italy almost a different world.
It's a fair comment,
right? But there's a scene after they've had sex for the first time, and he realizes that he doesn't know, like, how to get a hold of her, where she is, and he sees her and he follows her into the store and he starts talking to her, and it's like she's ghosting him for a second, like she's like, "Who are you? I don't know this." And as I was watching the scene, I was like, "Oh no!" And I realized that I really cared. Like, I gave a shit. Yeah. Like, what are you doing to this guy? Like, right? And then she's just fucking with him.
Yeah, I know. That was such a good scene. Yes.
But when I was watching it for the first time, that was the moment that I realized that the movie had me. Because like, it was like, don't do this to him. I was already cheering for the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. If that works for you, the movie will carry you through the rest of the movie. If it doesn't, then I have the feeling that you might think that this movie's kind of slow and boring.
Those who are wanting slasher film type of horror should stay away from it.
This is like
but I think if you like movies with a story, you will like this. People who don't even like creature features, I think, could like this movie if more people saw it.
You said earlier in the review, and you're dead right, that it's the cast that was going to make this work, right?
Mm-hmm.
The premise is, I mean, it's executed differently, but it's not unfamiliar to me.
Mm-hmm.
And she turns out to be this immortal creature, and she does have to feed off people, and sometimes alley cats and whatever.
Yeah.
There's a price to pay. It's that classic vampire thing. Go ahead and fall in love with a vampire, but know that they killed thousands and thousands of people. And if there's anything the film doesn't address, it's that. The end of the movie is very romantic. Spoilers. Please, if this sounds like a movie you want to watch, stop the review.
You might stop now,
and
yeah.
watch it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to press on, here it is. She gives up her eternal life, basically, to be with him.
Mm-hmm.
When she chemically connects and falls in love with someone, she basically, instead of absorbing her eggs and living for another lifetime, she excretes the eggs. That costs her immortality, and she can spend her days with him.
And I honestly did not know which way it was going to go.
Neither
in most movies, when I get to that scene, I know which way it's going to go. This one, I did not know what was going to happen. It surprised me throughout.
Her enough that he was like, well, if you're going to wolf out and turn into a monster and eat me, let's just do that then.
Yeah.
Like, that's where he was at that point.
And he's another one of these guys who has nothing left. I mean, there's
no more you can take from me, or so he thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's the ending. She excretes it. I don't think we get to see what it is. We hear some sort of gurgle sound, and it like drips into the ocean or something.
And I don't think I needed to see that. That was great restraint as a filmmaker to do that too. And this,
So there they are together, and on the beach, and they're gonna start their life together. He's no longer alone. She's no longer immortal. Credits.
I should say filmmakers. There are two directors.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I love it, and I really got the feels from that ending. But she's this immortal creature. And like I said, she's been alive for 2,000 years or something like this, and she's killed probably hundreds of thousands of people. Like, in the end, they have only really known each other for a couple of weeks, and she's given up her immortality for him. Like, what happens 2 weeks from now when they have a fight over dinner? You know, like, it's going on into an uncertain future, and I'm not really seriously trying to be mean to the movie. They play it up as a really happy ending, and it's the ending that we want. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, it's a more uncertain, risky ending than it is an aw shucks, flowers and rainbows ending.
But no.
And
I like characters like that.
Yeah.
They will
dimension.
They will take the ultimate risk, and it worked for me on. I think even more, I may like it even more than you do. Because as you're sort of saying, well, it's not the greatest thing. I wouldn't completely. I like it, and to me, it's just either a movie is a bad movie or it's a. Right. Or it's a good movie, and I think this is a very good film. It doesn't matter if it's meant to be horror or meant to be romance. I think it's as good as any.
But it's not one of those movies, if someone said I haven't seen Spring, I wouldn't be like, slap, how dare you, right?
Yeah.
So you should check it out. But like, there's certain movies, if someone says, oh, well, I've never seen The Big Lebowski. Seriously?
Yeah.
Right? It's you've made poor decisions. So those are the ones that I'll put in a special category where I'm like, please watch that movie. For me, I think like if what we've described sounds appealing to you, you'll absolutely like it. But I stand by where I started. This is actually more of a romance than it is a monster movie. It's a really good romance, and it's a solid monster movie, but it's a better romance than it is a horror movie. And that's not a bad thing. That's part of what makes it unique. But I think it's one of those things, if you went in I want to see this lady vamp out and kill a bunch of folk, that's not what you're going to get.
And that's what I was afraid that's what it was going to be. Yeah. I thought it was going to be like a Hostel movie.
Right.
Where he gets trapped into something in Italy and then it's torture porn type of stuff. And I was so happy it wasn't that. And what I had hoped, getting back to Monsters Dark Continent, is this type of thing that once we get through the exposition, then there would be a little bit of a payoff for these characters. You found it. I didn't hear this as far as what I wanted with this movie. It couldn't have achieved more. No. It's not perfect, but it's I think it's quite a strong movie, and it was a delight.
This is what low budget horror movies should be, right?
Yep.
Like use your strengths as assets. Okay, we can't afford to show the monster, right? So we're gonna cast this beautiful Italian woman, and we're gonna see the monster slowly come out of her, but she's going to be the character. We're gonna like her so much that we have no choice but to like the monster.
Yeah.
And that's a great achievement. And that's something that movies that have 20 times the budget of this movie do not successfully pull off. So high fives all around. I'm looking forward to whatever they do next. Frankly, like I will watch. These guys do
for sure. I want to look up. I also want to say that this woman can act. So we were a little bit with Laura Herring. We were talking about we're not quite sure. She's got a great presence. If she has a great character, she's all right. I still don't know if she's a terrific actor, but this Nadia Hilker is her name.
No, she brings it.
She could be cast in anything, and I don't know what else she's done, but
And she is beautiful. Like, you totally understand right away. Like, it's a hard thing to accomplish, that Romeo and Juliet, they see each other across the room and there's something magnetic, right? It's a romantic sort of idea, but to actually achieve it is hard. But I totally get that guy seeing her and be like, yeah, I got to take some steps here.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you're on his side. You're on his side. And that's what the dour opening is for. It's to get you on his side.
I guess, poor guy.
Bring him there. Right. Maybe they spend a little more time on it than they should, but I liked how Italy seemed like this beautiful, different world.
It's filmed so well.
It makes me
as it
want
can
to go
always
to
be.
Italy.
Oh yeah,
for sure. I want to go to Italy and find a monster.
I can't see you, but you smell beautiful.
Did you just move next door?
Hi, Mom. Didn't think you'd still be awake.
inside. Little boy. Dolores! Dolores! Dolores!
None of the neighbors saw any sign of this assailant. It's just an animal attack.
This has happened before.
Attacks like these happen all the time. Please, stay in your house, keep the doors closed until we sort this out, okay?
So, personal bias time, okay? I love me the werewolf genre. And it's an underfed genre, I think. And much like every other creature feature, for every good werewolf movie, there's 2 or 3 shitty ones. So I think that I was halfway home with this movie because the casting of Nick Damenzi, who I really like from Stakeland, and the Glass Eye Pix production company, who support low-budget horror movies, and almost anything that's come out of that production has been worth watching. Not all of them are amazing, but I've never really regretted my time with them. So, you know, I'm on board. I was excited to check out Late Phases, and it delivered. But much like a lot of the movies that we've talked about this time, it's kind of a character piece disguised as a horror movie. And I think if you can accept that you're really going to connect to it. And if not, you're going to be like, when's the werewolf going to get here? Strange and interesting ancillary. I think the closest movie, the movie that I kept on popping into my head when I watched this for the second time for the podcast, is actually Don Coscarelli's Bubba Hotep.
Okay.
Where you have Bruce Campbell playing an old Elvis in a nursing home who has to face off against a mummy, and this battle basically gives his life new purpose. That's kind of Late Phases here. Yep. This blind veteran is put into an old age home by his son, who loves him, but who their relationship is somewhat strained. And he finds out that there is a werewolf that's feeding off of this old age community.
Yep.
And that no one's going to believe him. And that as he has military experience and he's very capable in spite of the fact he's blind, he might be the only person who can do anything about it. That aggravated by the fact that the werewolf killed his only companion and best friend and his dog. He was upset about the neighbor too, but his dog really...
Well, I think he had a bit of a crush on the neighbor.
Yeah, she was sweet to him, right?
Yeah.
So basically he sees that he has, after that initial attack, he has a month to prepare himself mentally and physically for a fight to the death with a werewolf. And in a way, you get this feeling like he knows it's going to be a fight to the death, and that he wants it to be a fight to the death. And that this is going to be a way that this old soldier can go out fighting.
Yeah.
He's going to go out in a blaze of glory instead of fading away. And in a way, this werewolf is good enough to give him that opportunity. So what I'm going to say, if that sounds like it'll work for you, fucking check yourself into Late Phases.
Yes.
Because for me, that 100% worked. I like Nick Damenzi as an actor, even though he's playing a younger man playing an older dude. I get that. That usually bothers me, but for all the physical stuff that he's going to be asked to do, if you actually hired a senior citizen, he's going to break his fucking hip before you finish the movie, right? So for me, this movie worked. I liked it the first time, but actually watching it the second time, it reinforced its qualities to me. Like, it hits. But like Spring, it's a slow burn. So know what you're getting into.
I think I like slow burns because I really enjoyed this movie too. This one I would say, yeah, it's not perfect. I might talk about a couple things that annoyed me in it, but it's another one where I think Nick Damenzi, how do you pronounce it? Damenzi? Yeah, if you're on board with his performance, I really feel you're going to love this movie.
Yeah.
And I was early on, and to me it was kind of like if the Al Pacino character from Scent of a Woman, right, was being kicked out of the house, being sent to this retirement community, and he had to battle werewolves. That's what it would be. Immediately, that's the character I thought of, and I like this that like they. Seemingly, this is an older person. He has he has a disability, you might say, because of his blindness. But he knows who he is. He has total confidence in what he's doing. He cannot be manipulated or controlled by anybody. And he figures the whole thing out basically in one night.
Yeah.
And he also figures out this neighborhood in one night too, because he meets this genuinely nice person next door, and very, very short performance because it was that night that she gets killed. It's not a long but then there's these other 3 women who show up to greet him.
Right.
And they're very, very fake. And he sees through that and he just rips them a new one. And then they hate him immediately, which with the one character in particular becomes a factor later on.
And they are a little bit shrill, but I understand what their service is in the movie, like where they play. I get why they're there, right?
Oh yeah, no, they have a purpose there, but he just realized, okay, I have no time for somebody like that.
They're not going to help me.
And he would not be necessarily the nicest person to talk to, but his commitment to what he does and the skills that he has, and how he goes about doing what he does is absolutely brilliant. You know, I don't think that the werewolf idea is all that subtle.
No.
But where they decide to set this and where the werewolf attacks, who the werewolf is, even though I don't think it was too much of a surprise. We have kind of one false lead in there.
No,
but
I don't think it's trying.
But it's not. It's not about that. It's not about some big plot twist or anything like that. It's just it's a really interesting character study. The payoffs are there. I think there's enough stuff that Spring might be a little bit of a stretch for hardcore horror fans. This one, I think there's enough stuff
that'll get you through.
Yeah, and they go for an R rating here. Spring does too.
We don't get a lot of werewolf, but when the werewolf's around, it looks good.
It is,
and it's pretty wet, right? Like it's not a clean kill when you're getting killed by a werewolf. I also noticed the second time I would be interested to see, like, there's a lot of sort of silver in that picture, and I got the idea that these are 2 old dogs going at it, right?
Yeah.
The werewolf's preying on these old people, maybe not because they're easy prey, right? If he was going after somebody who was young and capable, maybe he wouldn't be able to chase him down. Maybe
I don't think
fight
so.
Back, right? So it's kind of subtle though, but I think it's there. I noticed it more in the second half. That werewolf was a little haggard.
Yeah, you're not. It
was kind of a nice touch though, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
A defeatable monster, I think. You know, but. Yeah, it's such a clever idea. I totally agree with you. I'd like to see more films from this group and from this director, and I'm sure you could recommend some.
Yeah.
It was the first one I saw, and it was probably 24 hours after we taped our last podcast. I saw this. I was gung ho, and then it's been a few months, and so I had to go look back at a couple things here, because I had a couple notes where I was. There are a few things that annoyed me a little bit, but. What did you think about the last scene? Was it a little bit too cheesy for you, or?
It was hit hard. It was like a little heavy. I mean, okay, like he sacrifices his life to kill this werewolf, right? And so his son discovers what's happened, and basically the scene tells the story. And the son kind of realizes what his father went through, and that if his father had said, "I'm preparing to fight a werewolf," no, he would not have fucking believed him, right?
No, he wouldn't. He's like, oh,
right.
My father's,
so it's a really sad moment, and I don't know if it was a way for the movie trying not to leave you devastated, because that guy went out the way he wanted to go out. I mean, I guess that's a win for him, but his son is still destroyed by it. Like, he's upset. That's Ethan Embry, by the way.
Yeah, he's in the Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda, Frankie and Grace and Frankie.
But
plays
you might
Lily
have
Tomlin's
first
son.
Seen him in the motion picture Dutch as the annoying little kid.
Oh, he was the kid from Dutch. Oh, I didn't know that.
Isn't that fucking crazy?
Ed O'Neill. Yeah, okay.
He also had a 1-episode run on Walking Dead, but it's very
memorable
because he gets his face peeled off.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But I like that actor. I think he's good. He's also
he's
made
a good
another movie
character
called Cheap Thrills, which I reviewed with Dorian. She hated it. I loved it, but I will still defend it. Check it out. Yeah. I don't know. That didn't bother me. I think by that time, Jason, I liked the movie so much that I was kind of resolved that I liked the movie.
Oh, yeah. This wasn't going to... It was just, to me, the difference when I'm thinking about ranking 6 movies here is this number 1 or 2, or is this somewhere in the middle?
Right.
And I guess it was like the shooting at the moon thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that action. I was fine with the scene itself, but it just seemed like, okay.
Too far?
I thought it was a little bit of a stupid way to end it, as opposed to Spring, which ended perfectly. And I mean,
it ends in a more
you could argue Willard has a strong end as well for comparing all these films. But
well, in Willard he goes crazy, and like I said, I kind of felt like he was crazy from the first time we saw it.
Yeah.
There was much more of a journey for the Demansky character.
Mm-hmm.
I got to give him a lot of credit. There's a lot of good acting to the left and right, and have cool character actors. Even the old ladies, they weren't just some random theater actors. These are all very distinguished people. Yeah. I think that the actual werewolf guy might actually been overplaying it a little bit with his big red face and smile. But what a fun role to play. But like, he was just a little big, but again, it didn't spoil the meal for me. Like, I get what he was going.
I like the pastor too, yeah. He's been in several things.
Tom Noonan, he's so weird. He was in Heat.
Yes, he was.
He's in the wheelchair. In Heat.
Yeah.
I love that dude. He always he has a strange vibe to him.
It's a very different presence.
Weird, stuttery energy, and he just can't not be sincere. You always believe him for some reason, but he's also very strange. Mm-hmm. I think he's in the same strange, crazy atmosphere that Jeff Goldblum lives in. There's something a little off about that dude, but very watchable. I always like seeing.
He's great on film. I
always like seeing.
I was happy to see him in there, and I kind of knew what was going to happen with his character, but at the same time, it was. Yeah, he just there's something genuine about what he's doing.
That's the thing. The movie's not about surprising you. It's not about scaring you. I guess this one does have a couple of pop scares. I was saying that this was a relatively scare-free list, but there's a little bit here.
But not for you and I.
By our standards, these are pretty tame movies, right? I really like Spring. I really like Night of the Lone Wolf, but they're not scary horror movies. They're really great, entertaining, engaging horror movies. But I keep on waiting for that next descent to happen. This isn't it, but please watch it. This is another one that seemed to come and go. A lot of people are like, late phases? What's this? That's actually a good point. In some areas, apparently, it is called Night of the Lone Wolf.
Okay, yeah.
And in some places, it's called late phases. And in my copy, it says late phases, Night of the Lone Wolf. If you come across any of those titles, please check
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Anything else you want to say about him?
No, it's solid. I think those who are interested in this type of movie, they will leave satisfied.
We found another good werewolf movie, you guys.
Yeah.
We have a situation in Africa.
There's been another attack.
You've got bad boys. Worms sure as hell ain't Mickey Mouse. From Universal Pictures comes the next chapter in the Tremors saga. The bitch is back. Load every gun.
Come to Africa. We'll have some laughs, see some games.
Tremors 5, Bloodlines.
So Jason, here's the thing. I love Tremors. I love Tremors. By that I mean the 1990 original Tremors, starring Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward. And who would have known that would have been such a potent comedic combo? But I think that movie, at risk of sounding hyperbolic, is fucking brilliant. I really, really do. As far as that kind of cheesy B-movie monster thing that is both fun and entertainment and has some genuine thrills and great creature effects, almost an unbeatable sort of in its niche of movies. And then we have these 5 direct-to-video sequels, and the 6th on the way this summer. And it's always been disappointing to me. I've always been disappointed with the Tremors franchise, and I always come back to the Tremors franchise because I love it so much. I just can't quit you, Tremors. But it's based, I was told anyway, it's based off of an original screenplay from the same writing team that helped bring us the original.
Tremors is the first,
And they've been attached, at least peripherally, to all of these movies, which is why I get increasingly kind of frustrated by them. I think that the problem with the Tremors franchise is that because they couldn't attach themselves to Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward because they had legitimate careers to live in. That's mean, but it's true. they decided to anchor the entire franchise on Gummer.
Michael Gross's
character.
Yeah, the father from Family Ties.
That's right. And in the first movie, he and Reba McEntire are great supporting players.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say to this day, as supporting players, I love those characters. They're supporting players. I think putting Burt Gummer in the front seat of these movies was a mistake. Honestly, I do. I don't think Michael Gross is bad. I just think that character should be in the supporting place.
He had to take over the Fred Ward role after the second one. Yeah, for 3 and on. 3. Yeah.
And he's been in everything since. Here's the thing. They've changed up the monsters. It's no longer just one underground tentacle monster. They break into 3 screamer monsters that are heat sensitive, which in turn turn into the ass blaster monsters that fly through the air by shooting fire out of their ass. I think for them, these guys like the monsters. They like designing the monsters, and they're more reliant the deeper into the series on CGI. But I still, I guess, in a limited way, stand by they want to show you a new monster a lot, and they're not just going to show you the same thing over and over and over again.
No. Each movie has a new evolution.
For me, I would have been happy to stick with them, but I appreciate what they're trying to do. They're trying to change it up their game, give you a new monster. But the humor in the first movie was always very charming and character and situation based, and the humor in the sequels are a lot more pee and poop and fart. So I have to cling to the stuff that I like. What I like is the creature design and the action sequences, and I have to sit and put up with everything that happens in between. Jamie Kennedy is not much of an actor. And the screenplay, the movie is called Bloodlines, really wants to shock us with the fact that he's going to eventually tell Michael Gross that he's his son. And it's the most telegraphed punch in the history of fucking cinema. It is brutal. So here's how you should watch Tremors 5, and you should only watch Tremors 5 if you're a person like me.
You have to keep going with this story.
You just like, someday they're going to redeem this franchise, right? Anytime they're not directly dealing with the creatures, skip to the next scene. And then you'll have, I think, an amazing 40 to 50 minutes. Unfortunately, the movie is 96 minutes long.
And it's a shorter one. Like, a lot of them are in the 2-hour range in a time when movies like this are under 90 minutes.
It's not good, but on the right day, it's a good, bad movie. That's where I start.
Okay, so those who are listening to this who know me, just forget about everything you've thought about with my movie tastes forever. So I have a real soft spot for Tremors.
Thank you.
The one that you're a fan of.
Yeah.
Do you remember when CTV used to show horror movies or kind of genre movies at midnight?
Right.
Yeah, and they don't seem to do that really anymore. And this movie came on. I couldn't sleep because I'm not great at sleeping. And, kind of whatever. It's got this kind of southwestern U.S. type of look to it. And, Kevin Bacon I knew. And I thought, Reba McEntire's in this. I'll watch this thing. And the setup and everything. And then the payoff, I thought, I'm really enjoying this. I'm not sure this is necessarily the type of movie I normally watch, but this cast is good. This is a great idea for a movie. And then I would go spend years going to video stores, and every once in a while it's, there's Tremors 2, there's Tremors 3. Well, there was no theatrical release, so this probably isn't that fantastic. So I went many years not watching any of these. So for this is how much I care about this podcast. I went and I watched, refreshed myself on Tremors. I watched Tremors, and I've watched all of the prequels leading up to Tremors 5. And what kind of surprised me about this was because I had such low expectations for each and every one of these sequels, there's a certain charm about Tremors I just cannot get past, where I kind of like aspects of these. I kind of like, I know you don't want him to be the guy who is, the through line for the series, but I kind of like Michael Gross in this role. I just like to see him get work because I don't know. I like to see what happens to these sitcom fathers long after their shows are done.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot of B movies, and some of them a lot worse than Tremors. And
fine.
so I was fine with them, and I even like 4.
Oh, really?
I like this
for what it is.
Yeah. I think they were out of ideas. Okay, so let's go back into the past and go to when the Tremors first showed up. And I kind of like that idea of the changing the name of the town to, that all worked for me. This one, from beginning to end, I hate it. I just hate. I thought maybe this will be the strangest list that I've ever had on Larry's. Maybe this will not be number 6. Everybody, when they see a 5 in it, will think, okay, Jason's gonna go that this is the worst. But I have no choice, and it's the stuff that you so beautifully put a few moments ago. There's a scene where continuously for probably about 10 minutes, something is peeing on Michael Gross.
Yeah.
And it's like I felt bad for him that at this point in his career, this is what he has to put up with. And the second that Jamie Kennedy came on screen, I was like, no, couldn't they have gone, where's Carrot Top? I mean, couldn't they have gotten...
You know who would have been better?
Anybody. Because they've had other people, not well-known actors too. Who was the guy from a couple movies ago? He was kind of the young hotshot who was supposed to be kind of like... They always try to work it out, so there's a Kevin Bacon type of character and a Fred Ward type of character.
And that's what's missing, because that's the heart of the first movie, is the relationship between Val and Earl, and their back and forth, and how much we like them. And Bert is like this divorced, survivalist, gung-ho gun nut, right? And again, I think he's a useful tool to have, but that's not where I would have centered it. I get why they made that decision, because they can keep Michael Gross. It becomes his franchise, and I don't think he sucks as an actor, but you're 100% right. I think that it was a kind of amusing sequence at first. He gets locked in this lion cage, and he's getting cooked by the sun, and he's starting to go crazy, and he's forced to drink his own urine.
Yes.
But I think I would have just rolled my eyes and let it go if he'd either poured the urine on himself or drank it, or the lion had pissed on him. All 3 of those things happen.
All at the same time.
All 3 of those things happen. At the very beginning of the movie, a guy's crouching to take a crap, and he falls into this hole, which sort of starts off with it's
such a bad start.
Juvenile. It's so juvenile.
And the other ones had
as bad that
No,
way.
they had some moments like that, but not as overt.
Was never a thing I wanted for the franchise. Like, I just don't like that. I like the concept of the land shark and the floor is lava. You know, it's basically the adult version of the floor is lava.
Yeah,
right? So I think that you need to find either someone that can bounce off of Michael Gross in a comedic way, where it's not about tension or it's not about reveals or conflict, where Val and Earl is practically a bromance, right? Those dudes love each other.
Yes.
Right? And we love them because of that. And that's the heart is absent entirely. I'm going to throw a little bit... They shot this in South Africa. That's their sort of way to
moving it
change
on.
It up a little bit. And there's this one badass South African guy who's always talking about how I'm invincible, I'm from South Africa. And then, of course, he gets brutally killed. And they tried. I'm not sure how successful they were to let some of that culture and color seep into the movie a little bit, to try in a way to differentiate it from the others. Here's the thing, I want to like the movie. That's
I can tell that you're wanting to.
I want to like this movie.
I kind of want to as well.
Yeah. So I'm cheering for the Tremors franchise, and I'm just like, no, you guys, do this a little bit, do that a little bit, because to my shame, as bad as this movie is, the new Tremors comes out this summer, and I'm not like, oh my god, more Tremors, but I will fucking get around to watching it. It will happen. And that's maybe just my fault. That's my thing. To everyone else, I just have to go back to watch the original Tremors. Treasure the original Tremors. And if you really want more, there is more. But diminishing returns does not say it.
Two's okay. Fred Ward was on for the second
Yeah.
film. You could probably get something out of that. It's
the
certainly
least
not as good.
diluted of all of them, I would say, but it's still 50% of the movie that the original was.
Yeah.
I'm not recommending this movie to anybody but myself, but I guess what you're checking into is how much I wish this was better than it was. It's got creepy monsters that eat people, and there's a 12-year-old boy inside of me that will always like that. I don't know what that is. And like I say, the design of the creatures is kind of interesting. Like
they're doing
again, what other movies do this? Like
Aliens kind of would try to
build the movie about designing a monster we haven't seen before and feeding a bunch of actors to it, right? Like it shouldn't be such a complex formula, but it turns out
this is another one where they tried really hard to keep the PG-13 thing going too.
That's the whole franchise.
And when they really hold back in what potentially they could do, but it goes back to the original was very PG-13 as well.
Hire a writer, you guys.
Yeah. Now there was an interesting character. Again, I'm grasping at straws here, but there was that other South African character with a pilot, and he was kind of like the Bert Gummer of because he just saw, was it his son or something, just got eaten by the monster, but then he somehow, it's kind of ridiculous how he survives this, but he has the same kind of energy and enthusiasm to keep on fighting after that.
He sees in Bert some sort of kinship, and they bro up pretty quickly.
A movie about those two guys might have been fine.
And that was the one moment of the movie where, like, when the giant worm jumped out and he swallowed him, and for a second thought he was going to be dead. That was when I was like, oh, that's too bad. I thought they were going to do more with that.
Here's the character I care about. Why couldn't it have been Jamie Kennedy?
Yes. I hate to be this mean to Jamie Kennedy, but dude, you were good in Scream and Scream 2, and that's all.
That's all.
That's all that I've seen of him that's watchable. He may be a passable stand-up comedian. He did this documentary about Heckler, about how, he is like the opposite of a fan base. He has the anti-fan base. And if you want to put that shit to bed, stop making movies like Tremors.
Types of characters, he makes himself out to be just a giant douchebag.
I don't know what the appeal of the character is. He's not sexy. He's not particularly heroic.
He's not funny anymore.
He's certainly not funny.
No. It's like somebody who is stuck in this high school persona.
Yeah.
And he's kept that. I don't know how old he is, in his 40s now or something like that, and it has zero charm.
And it's gotta suck, that you're only getting offered things like Tremors 5 and Son of the Mask. Like, I get it. It's not an easy road to hoe. But, man, the screenplay didn't do any favors.
Oh, no.
In his defense,
this was the laziest of the five.
But he brings nothing to it.
No. He doesn't. At least Michael Gross is trying.
Yeah. And someone's trying. And as long as their heart's there, I guess I'm going to stay with them. But man, this is a low point.
It is.
اگه الان یه دونه طوفان میومد، یه دونه طوفان خیلی شدید از پشت اون کوه، چیزی عوض میشد؟
Okay, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. This is a film directed by Anna Lily Amirpour. It's set in Iran. It's shot in America. It's spoken in Farsi, and it's done in a beautiful cinematic black and white. It is a gorgeous movie to look at. Like, you could turn the sound off and it would probably be engaging and still kind of make sense. There's subtitles even. It's an interesting movie, and it was sort of the art house horror movie buzz of 2014. And I certainly understand the attention, and I would be interested to see what more to come from this director. But here you feel that but coming. This is the question I want to pose to you. Is this an art film, or is this a horror film? Is it both?
I think it's both. It besides being a horror film, there's a bit of an homage to westerns in there.
It's set in Bad City.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just a weird translation, but that's what we get. The city is called Bad City.
Yeah. I think it's both. I think the other thing that's kind of unique about it is it's very feminist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably why it had to be filmed in the United States. Is there may be some people in Iran that were not thrilled with this film. I don't know that for a fact, but
I have to plead ignorance on a lot of the politics.
Yeah, I sort of don't know for sure too, but I had a very unique experience watching this. I rented it off of iTunes.
Right.
There were no subtitles available.
Oh no.
So but I thought this movie is so beautiful. I'm going to try to watch this film without relying on the English subtitles and see how much of it I get. There's this thing I once heard Steven Spielberg say, and he started off by saying, no offense to writers, but if you want to know if a movie is well directed or not, turn off the volume, watch the whole thing beginning to end, and see if you could follow the story.
Right.
And this holds up.
Yeah.
It's I got a couple of characters mixed up at early on, but once I kind of sorted that out, I thought it actually added to the experience to kind of not have to rely on English to follow the story. I'm not sure a lot of people would do that. We've been trying to find some other way to figure it out. But it was my concern in reviewing it that I wouldn't get enough information out of it. But it probably of the 6 movies, it was, the one where I could be, could get the story and rely completely on how beautifully shot it is. I love black and white photography. Some movies have black and white photography just as an add-on. I think this movie had to be told this way. The shadows and everything. It's very well done. It is dark. I think you could arguably say it's the darkest of the 6 films that we're looking at.
Yeah, it exists in this fantasy land. I kind of feel like this isn't a real world movie, right? There are broad strokes being played here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wanted to start out because, like I say, I'm a fan of the filmmaker. I will watch whatever she does next.
Yes.
Everybody likes this movie more than I do. Everybody likes this movie more than I do. I think that its greatest strength is its cinematography and its visual cinematic execution. You said you hated all the characters in Dark Continent.
Mm-hmm.
I did not connect with this couple at all.
You didn't?
I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And moreover, I felt emotionally pushed away from the movie at times. And when that happened, then I had to start asking questions. And the second you start doing that, the second you start saying, what's with the scene where the chick dances with the balloon for 5 minutes? The whole fucking thing starts to fall apart.
Okay.
And I think this is a short art film that got stretched out into a feature. And it was so beautifully executed that people missed the fact that there's barely a story that makes sense. It's almost Lynchian. And people who listen to the podcast know I tend not to react well to Lynch.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I'm not giving this a thumbs down review, by the way. Like, I like it well enough, but everybody seemed like this is one of the most visionary, innovative, like, great horror movies that they've seen. They say that this knocked Let the Right One In out of the water, and I think Let the Right One In is 5 times the movie this is. So our main character, he is Arash, who's one of the only people who's allowed a name. The girl is called the girl.
The girl, yeah.
The father is the junkie.
Yeah.
The prostitute is the prostitute. The pimp is the pimp, right? Arash, the first thing we see him do is he steals a cat from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a fight with his junkie dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this car that apparently he's been obsessed with getting taken from him by his dad's drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
Which starts out the conflict. Then we abandon him and we follow the girl for about 20 minutes. And we learn her modus operandi, the way she stalks people, which is really cool, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And she kills the evil drug dealer because we hate the evil drug dealer.
Well, and he's
no harm,
he's,
no foul.
I mean,
He's not just bad.
Stealing from prostitutes. He's
terrible.
A rapist. You know.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. Cartoon villain. So that we don't mind that she kills him. He's a bad person. She kills him. Right? That's the the hurdle you have to get over. We talked about it in Spring too. This woman kills people to live. So that's something that the relationship is going to have to address. Only it won't at all. In fact, the movie goes so far as to have her kill his father.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that she kills his father. Lets it go.
That's the big moral dilemma at the end. I mean,
didn't like it. We were like, when he finds his father dead in the street, they have this slow pan from the corpse up to the little boy who's found the corpse, and then up to Arish, who the boy is brought to see his father. And it zooms in on him. And I'm waiting. What's he going to be? Is it going to be rage? Is it going to be anguish? What's it going to... And it cuts. It's nothing.
So you wanted
Same
a
thing
payoff there.
He sees that she has the cat. Why does she have the cat? Because she killed his
him.
old man. So we wait in the car, we going on his face. There's a heavy silence between them. There's a good tension in it. He stops the car, he walks, he paces, and we're waiting. What's he gonna do? He's gonna do nothing. And the credits are gonna roll and we're gonna say, brilliant. No, you failed at story. You succeeded in atmosphere, you succeeded in character, you failed me in story. I'm a story guy.
Mm-hmm.
I will watch the next movie and I will hope that it's a story.
Mm-hmm.
This is a series of beautiful ghostly images and it's really an interesting watch. Like, I would recommend it to people, and to certain people I would say, oh, you would really fucking love this movie. But if you took the musical montages out of there and you took some of those scenic shots and the pumping oil shots out of there, this is a really amazing short film.
So you think if it was a short film, you would want it a little more?
I would have probably seen a lot of the same flaws, but I wouldn't have been... it's 100 minutes, and I think it probably wants to be 30 or 40.
Okay.
And I understand, Jason, that I am in the minority opinion on this, because I know people love this movie, and I get it. Like I say, I can't compliment the technique and the director of photography, and I don't think the acting is bad necessarily, but I don't feel connected or warm to any of these.
It's very
characters.
stylized.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry,
I don't. We're going to be
in a different place.
I think we're in a different place with this one, but I'm not sure it's as big a difference as with Dark Continent.
Right.
My initial reaction was very much that this may be, I hadn't watched all the movies, it was kind of in the middle of the pack watching this. This may be the best of the 6 that we look at. Right. But I've had a little bit of time to think about it. Now, I love David Lynch. If you don't, we would be in different places with David Lynch, so maybe that's why I was willing to accept some of those more surreal moments in there, because I thought it was, what's the purpose of this? I'm trying to figure this out. I'm, kind of enjoying that, and I'm enjoying the visual of it as well. This is not an emotional or sentimental movie at any point. I think the acting is very stylized. The fact that other than the main character, they all have, girl, pimp, other junkie.
Yeah.
Some aspect of what their personality is. They were not meant to necessarily be full characters. So I think you're consistent in that. I kind of like the idea of this woman going around and killing men who do horrible things. And in the case of the father, and I know you want the emotional reaction from the son, and I don't think this was the world's greatest father, to be honest.
Of course not.
No, he's using his son from beginning to end, and that's where I could see him. I don't know how to react to my dad's death, type of thing in that moment. To have he's gonna burst into tears or he's gonna start smashing things. I don't think that would have, for this particular guy, would have worked.
If not for the fact that the day before he kicked his father out of the house, he gave him a stack of cash and a stack of heroin and said, "Take it and never enter this house again."
So you think the guilt should have
within
been in
24
there.
hours, he finds his dad dead on the street. He's got to own a percentage of that. He has to. That's the other thing with this Arash character. I think the reason we're asked to like him is that he's good looking. Because, yeah, his dad may be a junkie, but he has no problem selling drugs to other people. When he sees that his dad's drug dealer dies, he doesn't say victory. He steals the dude's drugs and money and takes up his job.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. I mean,
Like,
he's
no
kind of a
alternate-
bullied character at the beginning, though.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe why
But he steals cats. He
but-
deals drugs. If he
Yeah.
wasn't good looking, like, what would we have here?
Yeah. It just, when he gets totally ripped apart by the drug dealer in the early scenes, I think that was enough for me to kind of cheer for him a little bit. But all of the other aspects you're talking about are totally valid, and I think...
When the guy steals his car and he punches the wall out of frustration
Yeah.
and breaks his freaking hand... Like,
he shows more
Yeah.
love for the car than he does for his father.
Right.
You're right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Now, my other thought on why this is such I wanted to see it for years, but I didn't
Get around to it.
I like the poster. It was such a mysterious poster, and I felt like this was something I should have watched before this, but I just hadn't.
Didn't get around to it. Fair enough.
I almost wonder, like you said, the politics of things. I wonder if the fact that it was a film by a woman from Iran
Maybe I would...
is the reason that, and there aren't a whole lot of women that are successful in the horror genre in general, no matter where they're from. There's can be a lot of censorship in Iran, and so that film industry is really kind of booming. The ones that they can sort of get out of the country, and we've seen that several of the foreign language film winners of the last few years have come from Iran, and we're finally getting that kind of perspective on life. So I think some of that stuff played into the success of this film. I also kind of related some scenes, I don't know why, kind of to the Sin City movies. Yeah, just some of the black and white and Bad City and the characters and the violence.
Sin City is a much more masculine world.
It is for sure. And I don't know how much money but they certainly had more money, I think, to make those movies than this.
I don't know
well,
that.
And the A-list cast that they could that Robert Rodriguez can assemble. So I like some of the simpler scenes, the quieter scenes when they're listening to music. Did you like that scene or not?
It was effective, and it's typically the kind of thing that I don't like. She literally drops the needle and she plays an entire song practically, and they just slowly walk to each other and embrace, and that's all we got for that scene. Right?
And neither of these characters are really that comfortable, I think.
Also, sorry to just jump all over the place. Yeah. He's high as fuck when he meets her.
He is. Yeah,
he's out of his mind.
Yeah,
and I think that might be like initially he would have been a victim, but there was something off about the exchange. I love the way that this girl stalks people, like she mirrors them.
Oh, that was so good.
They
that
talk
was so
about
cool.
it in the Anne Rice books. It's one of the few things that I liked about the Anne Rice books. Some of the dark powers that they have is that they'll mirror your actions. So you try to evade them and you can't, right? And it was interesting the way she did that. I found the power of the girl, as she is played by Sheila Vand, is her name. She was always more powerful when she was quiet. She has very little to say in the movie. It was almost to the point that she said so little. It would have been interesting if she was mute. There was. She has like maybe a dozen lines in the whole movie. I'm sorry if I cut you off though. Too.
It's okay.
I think that the scene that I really did connect to, because I'm coming off cold on the movie, and I like it. I just don't understand.
You think it could have been way better than it is,
really do.
and you You want it to live up to the reputation it has.
I do, and maybe because of the reputation, I was waiting. All right, movie, impress me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most impressive scene, it's kind of a weird, sweet scene. I guess it's the closest thing to that scene I was talking about in Spring, where she's ghosting him for a second. You're like, no, he steals these earrings to give to her, and he gives them to her, and her ears aren't pierced.
Yeah,
and so she asks him to pierce her ears. And it's a real bonding moment between the two of them. And they don't take her, she doesn't take her home and get he whips out a bobby pin and a Zippo and stabs it in her ear, and she digs it.
Yes.
And I really liked that scene because we had two characters connecting, and I got that. She was really touched that he got him this gift, and she wanted to wear the gift. Mm-hmm. And if it cost her pain, great. And if he inflicts that pain, kind of sexy. Mm-hmm. That scene really worked for me. Yeah. And there's flashes of brilliance throughout the movie. That's why I say, please keep doing what you're doing, girl. I will watch your next movie. Mm-hmm. I will say that A Girl Walks Home at Night is good, and in it, I see the potential for greatness. But largely, I think it's a little bit overhyped.
Maybe there's so much I liked. I bought the romance, and I like the fact that she could kill him, but then she sees, and I guess I'm seeing more of his good qualities than you did, that he is not like his father, like the pimp. He's not using anybody. No. I mean, he ends up selling drugs, and that's, I feel, purely for survival. Mm-hmm.
But if you're spending your days telling your dad that he's a pathetic junkie and why do I have to be the parent? He basically says to his dad at one point. Yeah. How can you then turn around and inflict that? Like his harsh judgment on the pimp character at the beginning of the movie, the pimp calls his dad a pathetic junkie. And he says to the pimp, well, who made him a pathetic junkie, right? The drug dealer. Mm-hmm. So to then, a few scenes later, become that guy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I had a hard time siding him. The thing he loved most of all before he met the girl was his car. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some good points, and I've watched this once. I haven't watched it multiple times, and so the next time I see it, I want to keep some of these things in mind.
I'm not trying to recommend.
So I don't think I have quite the love of it that everybody else does. But I remember it had this great reputation when it came out, but it looks fantastic. It looks fantastic, and I didn't mind the acting as far as the stylistic pieces. And again, it may be more of a thing where I do like that David Lynch type of thing, and there was a bit of that in there.
Another good horror date movie, by the way. This in Spring, if you were wanting to have a date night with a girlfriend and she was maybe only lukewarm on the genre, I think you could sneak these ones under the radar.
Spring, I think a little bit more than this one. Yeah. But yes,
please.
Yeah, there's a nice romance in it.
Please watch it. Please watch it. Tough list, as far as how to rank them. Mm-hmm. I can tell from our conversation that we're definitely not going to go 6 for 6.
I'd be surprised.
But maybe we'll go 0 for 6. Who's to say?
Is there a prize for that?
Yeah, there's a booby prize.
Punch in the face.
I don't know. We disagree. I think obviously our sharpest disagreement is Dark Continent.
Big time, yeah.
It surprised me. I always go in shields up with sequels too. So, it depends on the way the movie's fed to you. This is a movie that came and went. Nobody saw it, right? Mm-hmm. And I just watched it out of affection for the original. Whereas that Girl Who Walks Home at Night, I'd heard all of this great stuff about it before I came to sit into it. And you can never underserve how much that can feed into your experience of the movie.
The expectations.
I was expecting to be knocked over by A Girl That Walks Home at Night, and I was expecting to be kind of meh on Dark Continent, right? And maybe that expectation is what affected my rank. But you don't get to hear my rank until I hear yours.
Yeah, it's your show.
What was your least favorite of these?
I am just going to shock everybody with this one. Tremors 5 Bloodlines.
What?
No. Real surprise there. But yeah, for me, it's interesting that there were some Tremors movies that you liked less than this one. But this is my least favorite Tremors movie. But again, we're dealing with a very different league of films here once we get past the first one. So
every other movie on this list is significantly better than Tremors 5, I think.
Yeah. Well, my number 5, it's at least professionally made. I think it's well directed. I just had issues with
characters.
With the characters as Monsters Dark Continent. So it's not a surprise it's low on my list. I'm guessing it's higher on yours. And I don't know if I'm being too hard on it, but I just feel like they look like they had more to work with than some of the other films we were looking at, and I don't think they did service to this. I don't agree that there won't be another Monsters movie. I'm sure it might take them a decade to get the money together for another one, but I think there'll be another one at some point, and I will see it too, and I will hope to like it because I think there is something there, but it's. I think my bias comes from the first movie because I like the first movie
so much,
a lot, and that could be part of the Tremors thing too. Is that I saw enough bad ones and that my expectations were so low, but this was beyond bad. So 5 is Monsters Dark Continent. Number 4, it's really interesting. So the rest of the 4, I've just spent the last few minutes reworking my list, and I don't normally do that. Normally I'm pretty locked in on the list. So one that I was considering for number 1 is actually down to number 4. Willard is number 4 for me. I think Willard is the most Hollywood film. It's professionally put together. It's well directed. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm not sure it was a stretch for any of the actors, yet the actors are very good at these types of roles. So it may be 4, but I would say see the movie anyway. Yeah. My top 4 are ones I would give a thumbs up to.
Absolutely.
And I wasn't sure when I agreed to do this list if there would be any that I would like. So I'm happy that 4 of the 6 worked well for me.
That's a good ratio.
It's all right.
People have done far worse on this show. So.
Then the other one, another one I was considering for number 1, but I think you bring up a lot of points about A Girl Walks Home at Night. So that's number 3 for me.
Right.
To me, it's just too beautiful, and it appeals to some part of my movie-going brain that I really like, and I do like surreal scenes, and I like having to figure something out. I'll maybe watch it again with subtitles this time. Now that I did that little experiment to see if that changes my perspective, and particularly about the main character, because early on, I kind of felt for the guy in some way, and I was able to ignore some of his other bad traits, and then I like the romance in there, and I like the quietness of the romance, listening to music, and you described the ear-piercing scene was beautifully done. So there was enough in there for I couldn't put it as 4th, and I started to think about Willard a little bit more. So they're very, very close there. Number 2, and this was more kind of, is this going to be 4th or where is this going to be? But late phases, I really like that. And I think my initial criticisms, with it being the first movie in this list that I saw, were a little bit too hard. Again, the lead performance is so good. It's well worth it. It's not a well-known movie, and I'd like more people to see it.
Absolutely.
So if we can put it in the top 2, can help promote it. With the power that we all have here. Yeah. It's fabulous. And then number 1 for me was Spring. Was just a great surprise.
Yeah.
It isn't really a horror movie. It's a romance. But it does have creatures. It qualifies. It makes sense in this list of films. But it's more successful as a romance. But I just think it's a terrific film. Yeah. Again, not many people know about it. But I think of the 6, more people who go to see this, whether they like this genre or not, are going to be satisfied with it.
It's a good list. Curses to Tremors 5 Bloodlines. Because I think if not for Tremors 5 Bloodlines, you and I would have gone 0 for 6.
Oh, okay. All right.
But
we've agreed on the worst one every time. But
here's the thing, like, you could tell in that review I was scrambling to find reasons to endorse Tremors 5. I don't know why I stick with the Tremors franchise. I really do think my daddy took me to see Tremors in 1990, and it was just such an amazing experience for me. Like, I've spent the rest of my life trying to relive it or something.
It's gotta be. It's gotta happen.
By the 5th permutation, they've come so far from where they've started that it is a little disillusioning. And yet, sign me up for Tremors 6. Like, I officially have a problem. Tremors 5 is what it is. I watched it. You make your own decision, okay? I was surprised that you said that you considered Willard for number 1. I'm putting it all the way in 5th position. I like it fine, but like, it was no stretch for Arlie Ermey to play a loudmouth asshole. It was no stretch for Crispin Glover to play a weirdo, right? Like,
yes.
And in a lot of ways, the rat stuff was some of the less interesting bits of the movie. We spent most of our review talking about the performances, almost none about.
But the cat sequence is impressive, and
it's charming and it's fun, and it certainly doesn't deserve to be dismissed the way it has. It's like it's been wiped off the books entirely. This movie never happened.
Yeah, I had no idea too until I go to find it. Like, but I'll save the easiest one for the end. Nope, that was.
There are so many worse horror movies and so many worse remakes than this. It's ranking in 5th place, but that's more about the quality of the other movies than the lack of quality.
Okay.
To this one for me. Here's where it gets controversial, though. All the way in 4th place is where I put A Girl Who Walks Home Alone at Night. And again, I enjoyed it, and I hope I didn't sound as negative as it seemed like I did in the review. It's one of those things when everybody loves a movie, you sort of feel lost at it. And I have that same reaction to Moulin Rouge. Everybody was just telling me how Moulin Rouge was this game-changer, amazing movie, and I fucking hated it. I just couldn't understand. In this case, I didn't hate it. I was just like, all right, everybody calm down. We have found a really interesting new filmmaker here. That's the real...
That's the good news, yeah.
That's the good news here. And I do think it's worth watching.
Well, I'm with you on that. Yeah. I get a lot of heat because I hated Gladiator and still do hate Gladiator, and everybody else loved it.
That's a 3-star movie that got 5 stars.
I gave it 1 star. I hated it.
So now I'm going to disagree again, I guess. But again, all of these movies in the bottom half of the list, big fan of. 3rd place I'm putting Spring. I mean, it's a lovely romance, and I think that the monster movie works. And I'm just cheering for these filmmakers. Once again, I will keep an eye on these names. Next thing they come out with, be it a romantic comedy or a kids movie, whatever they do, I'm interested to see it.
Would you call it the most original of the list?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a vampiric quality to the relationship.
It is, yes.
Like, she feeds off of people, and she's kind of a dressed-up vampire. And we've seen lots of movies about people falling in love with vampires. In fact, there's 2 of them. There's one of them on this list. I think it's really the warmth that kind of sideswiped me. How much I cared about that relationship.
Yeah.
That's not what you expect when you sit down to watch this monster movie.
No, not at all.
And it really worked for me. But here's where you get mad. All the way in 2nd place, I'm putting Dark Continent. And it's an ambitious monster movie like we don't see. I think whether or not you think it was successful, it was trying to say something. And it was, naive, poor kids from poor neighborhoods are recruited into the military to go fight wars that they do not understand for reasons that they do not understand. And that happens every day. It's not as fucked and crazy as this, but it does happen. And your average horror movie fans won't think about it unless it's presented to them in a package like this. Because they're not going to watch American Sniper, right? They're not going to watch The Hurt Locker or Zero Dark.
Or even some of the Michael Moore documentaries. Or
Jarhead or anything like that about people who are sent to the middle of nowhere where they go crazy. Or maybe they were crazy before they went there. But like, the chaos of the world, the violence of the world, the fact that I did care when these guys got killed off. Not because they were great people, but because of how much they loved each other. That medic, when he fails to save his best friend who's got his legs blown off and is so upset that his friend died in his arms, a few scenes later gets really coldly blown away by a sniper. And by that time, it's such a shocking, sudden moment when he dropped over. I was like, there was a rock sunk in me. I was like, that sucks. That sucks.
You were surprised by that?
I wasn't surprised that he died, but it sucked that happened to him. And I felt it. And I felt it in a way I would in an actual visceral, like, war movie. And this is
I felt that I didn't feel it was a monster movie. I thought it was a war film. And maybe I'm being too unkind here, but that stuff was handled in movies like Platoon way, way better.
Yeah, but it's
naive
not,
people.
It's a genre movie. It's still being a genre movie, but it's saying things.
The war movies are genre movies.
Yeah, but it's saying things that would be in a Platoon movie, but in this sci-fi monster sort of
and
stuff.
your idea is to get that message to horror movie fans.
You're sending that message to the Friday the 13th crowd.
Who will not see Platoon or...
Exactly.
Well, yeah, as far as if you feel that was the intention, that's a noble intention.
Yeah.
I just didn't see that at all.
And then moving on, another military sort of theme movie. I got completely sideswiped by late phases. And when I said at the beginning of the movie, like, I love a good werewolf movie, and they're a rare find. Like, you can find werewolf movies, but a really good one that you can sink your teeth in and enthusiastically recommend. There's an American Werewolf in London, and there's this one. And maybe Silver Bullet if you can tolerate some 80s. But like you could count it on one hand. They're really delicious horror movies. Yeah. And add this one to that list. I gave it the number one place because it overperformed for me. It owes a lot to Bubba Hotep. Like I didn't say that glibly. I do think that they borrowed a lot from Bubba Hotep. Okay. But I like that movie too.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's my list. We disagree, but other than Dark Continent, I think we're pretty close.
Yeah, we were pretty close. If it wasn't for like just a couple moments in late phases, it could have been number one for me.
Yeah.
I just hated the last moment.
Right.
You know, and to me, the last moment is what's going to stick with me.
They left you in the wrong place.
Yeah, and just some of the characters were a bit much, as you said. You know, the villain is not really all that subtle. Where it was a lot more to me, a lot more complex in Spring.
I was raised in a lot of ways by a lot of veterans too. My grandparents took care of me a lot of time in the summer months, and they were involved with the Legion of Frontiersmen, a bunch of veterans doing work for other veterans.
Yeah.
So I think I might have identified with the mindset. Not that any of them wanted to die in a blaze of glory.
Yeah.
But the idea of in the late stage in their life being able to reclaim this former nobility and glory and having that being their identifying characteristic, as opposed to sitting and slowly drinking themselves into oblivion, which
not feeling helpless.
I connect to that.
Yeah.
And I felt I gave me the feels. I was I was sad for him and happy for him kind of simultaneously, and it's a kind of a complex twist. So
I don't disagree with your number one choice. Your number two choice, I have issues with, but that's...
If we agreed on everything, it would be a boring podcast.
It would be, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming back again and doing some creature features with me.
Thanks,
and,
it was fun.
I have this feeling like maybe we'll do it again someday.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks, Jason. And so we come to an end of another episode of Rank and Review. Thanks again to Jason Dubray for sitting in and talking 6 creature features with me. I'm sorry we ended up fighting again, Jason, but what are you gonna do? Please send me your feedback. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong. Am I totally wrong about Dark Continent? Am I totally right or wrong about A Girl Who Walks Home Alone at Night? Please let me know at ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. Please check out the website at ranknreview.ca for Canada, and definitely continue listening to Rank and Review. Please tell that other movie fan in your life about the show, and we'll catch you in about 2 weeks.